At the reunion, she mocked. Still single? Pathetic. I smiled and introduced my fiancée, her high school crush who chose me. The group chat exploded with her meltdown screenshots. Looking back, I realize Amber had been systematically dismantling my confidence for 3 years, though I'd been too focused on making our relationship work to see the pattern clearly. She'd built her entire lifestyle brand around luxury experiences while I funded the reality behind her Instagram posts. I'm Derek, 31, working as a renewable energy consultant here in Austin. Decent job, stable income, the kind of guy who shows up when he says he will. For 3 years, I thought I was building something real with Amber, a lifestyle blogger who somehow turned spending money into a career. What I didn't realize was that I'd become the primary target in her campaign of public humiliation. Every social gathering became an opportunity for her to mock my career choices in front of friends. Derek's so practical, she'd announce with that fake laugh. He thinks solar panels are more exciting than actual adventures. The group would chuckle uncomfortably while I smiled and tried to change the subject. She had this talent for making my renewable energy work sound boring, like I was some kind of basement dweller instead of someone helping businesses transition to sustainable power systems that would actually improve people's lives. Her favorite game was comparing me to her ex-boyfriends who had more exciting lives. My ex Marcus was a travel photographer, she'd tell strangers at parties. He understood that life is about experiences, not spreadsheets. Never mind that Marcus was unemployed and living with his parents, or that my boring job was what paid for her experiences. She'd deliberately flirt with other men while I watched, then act shocked when I expressed any discomfort. You're being insecure again, she'd say, like my feelings were some kind of character defect. I can't help it if confident men are attracted to successful women. The gaslighting was constant and expertly delivered. If I questioned her behavior at parties, I was controlling. If I stayed quiet, I was boring and unengaged. There was no winning position except complete submission to her narrative that I was lucky to have her attention. Her Instagram followers ate up her boss babe content about never settling for mediocrity. Posts like "Know your worth and demand better" and "Life's too short for small dreams and smaller men" got hundreds of likes while I privately transferred money to cover her credit card bills. She'd screenshot DMs from other men and show them to me casually, claiming she was just being transparent, but always with comments like, "See? Some men actually appreciate confidence and ambition." The irony wasn't lost on me that I was funding the platform she used to diminish me, but I kept telling myself that relationships required sacrifice and understanding. I thought if I just tried harder, supported her dreams more completely, she'd eventually appreciate what we had together. Instead, she seemed to view my dedication as proof that she could do better. Every kindness I showed became evidence of my desperation rather than love. Every boundary I tried to set became proof of my inadequacy as a partner. She was reshaping my entire sense of self-worth while I paid for the privilege. And somehow I'd convinced myself this was normal relationship dynamics rather than systematic emotional destruction. I discovered the true scope of our financial imbalance when I finally tracked our monthly expenses during a particularly stressful period at work. I was covering $5,200 every month while Amber contributed sporadically from sponsored posts, treating her minimal income like generous charity she was bestowing upon our relationship. Rent on her downtown apartment was $2,100, car payment and insurance another $680, groceries that somehow always cost $400 because she insisted on organic everything, utilities, streaming services, her gym membership, beauty treatments, and the constant stream of emergency expenses that always coincided with new product launches at her favorite stores. Meanwhile, her actual contribution averaged maybe $300 monthly from Instagram partnerships, which she'd announce like she was single-handedly supporting our household. "I made $500 from that skincare post," she'd say, conveniently forgetting that I'd just transferred $1,800 to cover her credit card balance from the shopping spree she'd taken to celebrate the collaboration. She used this financial dependence strategically, threatening to find someone who actually appreciates luxury whenever I suggested budgeting or saving money for actual goals like a house or retirement. "You're being controlling again," she'd say when I showed her our expenses. Successful couples invest in their lifestyle and image. At social events, she'd publicly mock my practical clothing choices and preference for reasonably priced restaurants. Derek thinks Olive Garden is fine dining, she announced at her friend Madison's birthday party, getting laughs from people who didn't realize I was funding her $180 entrees at the steakhouses she preferred. I'm trying to teach him that presentation matters, but some people are just naturally cheap. The word cheap always stung because I wasn't cheap, I was practical. I'd grown up understanding that money represented time and effort, not some infinite resource for impressing strangers. But Amber had this way of making financial responsibility sound like a character flaw, like my reluctance to blow money on overpriced cocktails meant I didn't understand how successful people lived. Her manipulation extended to isolating me from friends who questioned our dynamic. When my colleague Brad mentioned that Amber seemed high maintenance, she launched a campaign to convince me that Brad was jealous of our success and didn't understand our power couple relationship. He's probably threatened by confident women, she'd say, planting seeds of doubt about anyone who showed genuine concern for my well-being. Soon I found myself declining invitations from friends who might ask uncomfortable questions, choosing instead to spend weekends at events where Amber could showcase our relationship while I smiled quietly and picked up every check. The social warfare was relentless and calculated. She'd announced to groups that she was training him to have better taste, like I was some kind of rescue project rather than the person financing her lifestyle. At restaurants, she'd order the most expensive items on the menu, then complain loudly about my choices. Derek's having the chicken again, she'd tell our server with exaggerated disappointment. I keep telling him to be more adventurous, but engineers are so predictable. The constant public criticism wore me down systematically, making me second-guess every decision and desperately seek her approval for the most basic choices. I realized I'd become a prop in her lifestyle brand, the stable boyfriend who enabled her adventures while she positioned herself as too dynamic for ordinary relationships. The worst part was how she'd reframe my generosity as inadequacy, suggesting that truly successful men wouldn't even notice the expenses because they'd be making so much more money. My friend Jessica's boyfriend surprised her with a $3,000 weekend in Napa. She'd say after I'd paid for another expensive dinner, some men actually understand how to treat a woman properly. I was losing my sense of self-worth and financial security while she built her personal brand on the foundation of my support and sacrifice. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon while I was volunteering at the local aviation museum's vintage aircraft restoration project. I'd been working with a team to restore a rare 1943 P-51 Mustang, and we'd finally gotten to the delicate work of rebuilding the engine's cooling system. This wasn't something you could just walk away from. The aluminum components required precise timing and temperature control, and we had a narrow window to complete the welding before the metal became too brittle. I was focused on positioning the radiator housing when Amber stormed into the hangar like a hurricane, her designer heels clicking aggressively against the concrete floor. The other volunteers looked up from their work, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden intrusion of someone who obviously didn't belong in our grease-stained environment. "Derek, we need to leave right now," she announced, completely ignoring the fact that I was holding a delicate piece of 70-year-old aircraft equipment. Madison's yacht party started an hour ago, and I promised her we'd be there for the Instagram content. This is important for my brand. I carefully set down the radiator component and looked at her standing there in a $300 sundress, clearly expecting me to drop everything and follow her to another expensive social media opportunity. "Amber, I can't leave right now. We're at a critical point with this engine restoration, and if we stop now, we'll have to start the entire cooling system rebuild from scratch." Her face went through several expressions: confusion, irritation, and finally outrage. "You're choosing some old broken airplane over me? Over my career?" The way she said it made it clear she viewed my volunteer work as some kind of childish hobby rather than a meaningful project that was preserving aviation history. "It's not broken, it's being restored," I said calmly, "and this isn't a choice between you and the plane. It's about honoring commitments and seeing important work through to completion." She looked around the hangar with obvious disgust, taking in the other volunteers who were pretending to focus on their work while clearly listening to our conversation. This is your pathetic airplane obsession, Derek. You'd rather play with old junk than support my actual career. I deserve someone with actual ambitions, not someone who gets excited about dead people's hobbies. The words hung in the air for a moment, and I felt something shift inside me. Instead of my usual apology and scramble to placate her, I found myself responding with complete calm. Then go find him. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. What did you just say? I said go find him. Find someone with actual ambitions who gets excited about supporting your brand. I'm staying here to finish what I started. For a moment, she seemed genuinely shocked that I wasn't following the script we'd established over 3 years of her demanding and me complying. You can't be serious right now. I'm completely serious. This project matters to me, these people are counting on me, and I'm not walking away from my commitments because you want me to be a prop at another party. She waited for me to crack, to apologize and explain that I didn't mean it, but I just turned back to the engine housing and continued positioning it for welding. Fine, she said, her voice shaking with rage, but don't expect me to wait around while you play mechanic. Some women have standards. Good luck with that, I replied without looking up, and I heard her heels clicking rapidly toward the exit. The silence that followed was profound, but instead of the anxiety I'd expected, I felt this incredible sense of relief washing over me. One of the older volunteers, a retired Air Force mechanic named Frank, quietly handed me the welding torch. Smart move, son, he said with a slight smile. Now let's get this bird flying again. I blocked Amber's social media accounts and phone notifications that same evening, creating a digital silence that felt like stepping out of a noisy room into peaceful quiet. For the first time in 3 years, I could scroll through my phone without seeing constant reminders of expenses I should be covering or parties I should be attending to support her brand. The mental clarity was immediate and startling. I hadn't realized how much cognitive energy I'd been spending on managing her emotions and financing her lifestyle until that burden suddenly lifted. My supervisor at the renewable energy firm, Janet, noticed the change within days. You seem different lately, she mentioned during our weekly project review. More focused, more confident in your recommendations. She was right. Without Amber's constant criticism echoing in my head, I found myself speaking up in meetings, proposing innovative solutions for complex installations, and actually enjoying the technical challenges that had drawn me to renewable energy in the first place. 3 weeks after the Aviation Museum incident, Janet called me into her office with news that would have seemed impossible during my relationship with Amber. We're promoting you to lead the new solar installation project for the downtown medical complex, she said, sliding a contract across her desk. It's worth $2.3 million to the firm, and honestly, you're the only person I trust to manage something this scale. The promotion came with an $18,000 salary increase and the kind of professional recognition I'd been quietly working toward for years. Without Amber's constant financial drain, I was suddenly saving $1,200 every month, money that had been disappearing into her credit card payments and luxury lifestyle maintenance. I opened a high-yield savings account and enrolled in advanced certification courses for wind turbine maintenance, skills that would make me even more valuable in the growing renewable energy sector. The Aviation Museum became my weekend sanctuary. Frank and the other volunteers welcomed me into their community of people who understood that meaningful work didn't need social media validation. We started co-leading workshops for high school students, teaching basic mechanical skills and showing them how precision engineering had evolved from propeller aircraft to modern wind turbines. These kids were genuinely excited about learning, asking thoughtful questions about gear ratios and electrical systems without once mentioning whether our work was Instagram-worthy. My confidence returned gradually, like a plant that had been surviving in shade finally getting proper sunlight. Colleagues who had previously seen me as withdrawn and stressed began inviting me to after-work gatherings, recognizing that I was actually interesting company when I wasn't constantly worried about getting home to manage Amber's latest crisis. I started accepting these invitations, rediscovering my ability to contribute to conversations about topics more substantial than luxury lifestyle trends and social media metrics. The most surprising change was physical. I'd been carrying tension in my shoulders for so long that I'd forgotten what relaxation felt like. Without the constant stress of wondering when Amber would next criticize my appearance, my career choices, or my financial contributions, I found myself sleeping better and actually looking forward to weekends instead of dreading the social events where she'd use me as material for her ongoing performance of superiority. Amber launched her social media counterattack within days of our breakup, posting an aggressive campaign of expensive dates and luxury experiences designed to demonstrate her immediate upgrade from our relationship. Her Instagram stories became a constant stream of champagne glasses, private jet interiors, and mysterious male hands reaching across dinner tables at restaurants I'd never been able to afford. She was performing wealth and desirability with the desperation of someone trying to convince herself as much as her followers. Each post felt calculated to trigger maximum jealousy, featuring diamond jewelry with captions like, "Finally being treated like the queen I am," and staged photos from five-star hotels with hearts and crown emojis. Her friend Madison became her willing accomplice in this elaborate performance, helping orchestrate fake scenarios that grew increasingly ridiculous. They posted stories from exclusive rooftop bars showing expensive bottles with multiple wine glasses, implying group dates with wealthy suitors. Madison would take photos of Amber trying on engagement rings at high-end jewelry stores, posting them with captions about "practice makes perfect" and "some women know their worth." The most pathetic attempts involved staged proposal setups, Madison photographing Amber's reaction to finding rose petals and candles arranged in hotel rooms, complete with emotional crying selfies and captions about being overwhelmed by real love. But the engagement photos always disappeared within hours, probably after reality set in about the cost of the hotel room they'd rented just for content. The private jet photos were particularly transparent, always cropped to hide identifying details, probably taken during brief airport tours or borrowed from stock photography websites. She'd post champagne glasses on airplane tray tables with captions about first-class lifestyle with first-class men, but the timing never aligned with actual flights, and the backgrounds looked suspiciously generic. When my digital silence continued for weeks, Amber escalated to posting indirect attacks designed to shame me into responding. Finally free from boring men who choose hobbies over ambition, she posted alongside a photo of herself at some tech startup networking event. Dodged such a bullet by leaving mediocrity behind. Another post showed her at an upscale car dealership sitting in a convertible BMW, captioned, "Upgrading everything in my life, including the company I keep." She started posting motivational quotes clearly directed at me, "Real men invest in their woman's dreams," over a sunset background, and "Never settle for someone who makes you feel small," paired with photos of expensive restaurants. The desperation became obvious to everyone except Amber herself. Her follower engagement started declining as people recognized the performance for what it was, a woman trying way too hard to prove she was winning at life. Comments on her posts shifted from supportive to concerned to occasionally mocking. "Who are you trying to convince?" one follower asked on a particularly over-the-top post about living my best life with real men. Another commented, "This seems exhausting. Are you okay?" The mysterious suitors she kept hinting about never appeared in actual photos with her, just strategically cropped hands and shadows that could have belonged to anyone, including Madison's boyfriend or random people at restaurants. Her content became increasingly frantic, posting multiple times daily with escalating claims about her romantic success and financial upgrade. "Some men actually understand that an investment in their woman is an investment in their own happiness," she wrote, posting a photo of expensive shoes that I suspected she'd bought herself and then returned. She started sharing screenshots of direct messages from other women asking for dating advice, positioning herself as an expert on knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve. The performance was exhausting to witness secondhand through mutual friends who kept me updated despite my requests not to hear about her social media activities. What struck me most was how clearly her posts revealed that she'd never actually valued me as a person. I'd been a financial resource and social media prop, and now she was desperately trying to replace both functions with increasingly elaborate fiction. The irony was that her campaign to prove she'd upgraded was actually broadcasting to everyone that she was struggling without the stability and genuine support I'd provided for 3 years. Her brand, built on luxury lifestyle content, was becoming a parody of itself as she manufactured increasingly unbelievable scenarios to maintain the illusion of success. The country club disaster happened 3 months after our breakup, at her parents' 30th wedding anniversary celebration. Amber had been promoting this event for weeks on social media, positioning it as her opportunity to introduce her upgrade to her family's social circle. She brought Chase, a wealthy real estate developer who drove a Ferrari and wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. From the photos she posted beforehand, this was supposed to be her triumphant return to the family fold with proof that she'd found someone worthy of her standards. What she hadn't counted on was Chase actually being intelligent and genuinely interested in renewable energy technology. The moment her parents, Robert and Susan, introduced me as the nice young man who used to date Amber, Chase immediately perked up with authentic curiosity. Renewable energy consultant? That's fascinating. I've been looking into solar installations for my new development projects, but I'm struggling to find someone who really understands the integration challenges. For the next hour, Chase peppered me with thoughtful questions about battery storage systems, grid connectivity, and the economics of residential solar installations. He was genuinely engaged, taking notes on his phone and asking for my business card. Meanwhile, Amber stood nearby in her $400 dress, watching her carefully orchestrated plan fall apart as her supposed trophy boyfriend paid more attention to my expertise than her attempts to redirect the conversation. "Chase, didn't you want to see the club's wine cellar?" she interrupted desperately, but he waved her off without looking away from our discussion about inverter efficiency ratings. The situation became even more uncomfortable when her parents joined our conversation. Robert, who'd always been practical despite his country club membership, was fascinated by the cost savings potential of commercial solar installations. "You know, Derek," he said, completely ignoring Amber's increasingly frantic signals, "I've been thinking about solar for the club's facilities. The roof space is enormous and mostly unused." Susan added her own questions about residential systems, mentioning that several neighbors had been asking about her experience with the solar installation I'd helped them plan before Amber and I broke up. Chase was taking notes throughout this conversation, clearly seeing a potential business opportunity. "Derek, I'd love to set up a proper meeting to discuss a partnership. My developments could really benefit from someone with your expertise, and frankly, I haven't found anyone else who understands both the technical and financial aspects this thoroughly." Amber's face went through several expressions: confusion, embarrassment, and finally rage as she realized that her parents were treating me with more respect and genuine interest than they were showing Chase. The evening took a darker turn when her younger brother Lucas, clearly uncomfortable with the performance, accidentally revealed family information that Amber had been desperate to hide. "Mom, did you transfer that money to Amber's account yet?" he asked during dinner, apparently forgetting that Chase was listening. "She said she needed it to cover her rent and that blogger thing she does." The silence that followed was excruciating. Robert's face darkened as he realized that family financial information had been exposed in front of a relative stranger, while Susan looked mortified that their daughter's money troubles had become public knowledge. Chase's expression shifted as he processed this information. The woman who'd been showcasing expensive tastes and luxury lifestyle was actually being financially supported by her parents. Amber tried to laugh it off. "Lucas doesn't understand business expenses and brand investments." But the damage was done. Chase had seen behind the curtain, and her parents were clearly upset about having their private family matters aired during what was supposed to be their celebration. The evening ended with obvious family tension, Chase politely but coolly declining Amber's invitation to extend their date, and me exchanging business cards with both Chase and Robert while Amber watched helplessly from across the room. Her plan to demonstrate her upgrade had backfired completely, revealing instead that she was financially dependent on her parents while her boring ex was building genuine professional relationships with the very people she'd hoped to impress. The 10-year high school reunion became the stuff of legend among our graduating class, though not for the reasons Amber had planned. I'd been looking forward to the event for months, not because I wanted to show off, but because I was genuinely excited to reconnect with old friends and share what I'd been building. Emma and I had gotten engaged 2 weeks earlier, a quiet, perfect proposal during a weekend trip to test some new wind turbine installations. She was brilliant, an aerospace engineer working on NASA contractor projects, and absolutely nothing like the shallow, materialistic people I'd somehow convinced myself I needed to impress during my relationship with Amber. When we walked into the reunion venue, I felt that comfortable confidence that comes from being with someone who genuinely wants to be with you. Emma looked stunning in a simple black dress, charming everyone with her genuine interest in their lives and careers. She remembered details from stories I'd told her, asked thoughtful questions about people's work and families, and somehow made everyone feel like the most interesting person in the room. I spotted Amber across the room looking good but desperate, working the room with forced laughter and obvious performance energy. She was alone, despite months of social media posts about her various wealthy suitors. Amber approached our group with that familiar predatory smile, clearly planning some kind of dramatic confrontation. "Derek," she announced loudly enough for nearby conversations to pause. "Still single and pathetic, I see. Some things never change." The words were designed to humiliate me in front of our former classmates, to position herself as the successful one who'd moved beyond our relationship while I remained stuck and lonely. Instead, I smiled calmly and put my arm around Emma. "Actually, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Emma." The shift in Amber's expression was immediate and devastating. She recognized Emma instantly, not just as a stranger, but as Emma Richardson, the girl who'd been valedictorian, student body president, and the object of Amber's intense jealousy throughout high school. Emma had been everything Amber pretended to be: genuinely intelligent, naturally confident, academically accomplished, and effortlessly popular without needing to tear others down. "Emma Richardson," Amber whispered, her voice barely audible as the reality hit her. This wasn't just any woman, this was her former high school crush, the popular, intelligent girl Amber had always envied but could never compete with academically or socially. Emma extended her hand graciously. "Amber, right? Derek's mentioned you. Congratulations on your lifestyle blog. I saw some of your posts about knowing your worth. Really inspirational stuff." The kindness in Emma's voice made Amber's situation even more humiliating, because there was no malice to push back against, just genuine pleasantness from someone who was clearly superior in every way that actually mattered. "We just got engaged last month," Emma continued, showing her ring with obvious happiness. "Derek proposed at a wind farm in West Texas. Watching him work with such precision and expertise, it was like seeing him in his element. I knew I wanted to spend my life with someone who brought that kind of passion and intelligence to everything he does." Our former classmates were listening with obvious fascination, some remembering the dynamics between Amber and Emma from high school. Amber's carefully constructed persona was crumbling as she realized that not only had I moved on, but I'd somehow ended up with the exact person she'd always wished she could be. "Derek and I are actually starting a joint consulting firm," Emma added casually. "Sustainable aviation technology, combining his renewable energy expertise with my aerospace background. We're working on some NASA contractor projects that could revolutionize how aircraft use solar power integration." The professional success, the genuine partnership, the shared intellectual interests. Everything Emma described was the opposite of what Amber had offered during our relationship. Where Amber had mocked my career and hobbies, Emma celebrated and enhanced them. Amber's public meltdown began immediately. "This is unbelievable," she said, her voice rising. "You stole her from me, Derek. Emma, he's just using you. This is exactly what he did to me, pretended to be successful and stable until I saw through his act." The accusation was so absurd that several classmates actually laughed. Emma squeezed my hand gently and smiled at Amber with genuine pity. "I think there might be some confusion. Derek didn't steal anything. We met through professional networking when I needed a renewable energy consultant for a project." But Amber was past rational conversation. "You have no idea what he's really like," she continued desperately. "He's controlling and cheap and boring. Ask him about his airplane obsession. He cares more about dead people's hobbies than his girlfriend's career." "You mean the aviation museum restoration work?" Emma asked with genuine interest. "I think it's amazing. Derek's teaching me about vintage aircraft engineering. It's fascinating how the precision required for those restorations translates perfectly to modern renewable energy installations. Every attempt Amber made to diminish me only highlighted how perfectly matched Emma and I were. The conversation was attracting a crowd now, other classmates drifting over to witness what was clearly becoming a legendary reunion moment. "This is insane," Amber announced to the growing group. "Derek was nobody in high school. He was boring then and he's boring now. Emma, you were popular and smart. Why would you settle for someone like him?" Emma answered with perfect clarity, "Because Derek is kind, intelligent, passionate about meaningful work, and builds people up instead of tearing them down. Because he sees potential instead of just problems, and because he loves me for who I am rather than what I can do for his image." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Emma added the final blow with gentle sincerity. "I'm sorry things didn't work out between you two, but honestly, it sounds like you both dodged a bullet. You deserve someone who appreciates what you bring to a relationship, and Derek deserves someone who values his character over his bank account." Amber fled to the bathroom, but the damage was done. Within minutes, screenshots of her increasingly unhinged messages in our high school group chat started circulating. She was posting frantically about betrayal and theft, accusing me of manipulation and Emma of being a fake friend. The messages became increasingly erratic. Derek was MY type first, Emma always thought she was better than everyone, and some people never learn to stay in their lane. The screenshots spread through our graduating class faster than wildfire, destroying what remained of Amber's carefully constructed image and revealing her true character to everyone who'd once known her. 6 months later, I heard that Amber had moved back to her parents' house after her lifestyle brand completely collapsed. Meanwhile, Emma and I were planning our wedding and launching our joint consulting firm, already booked solid with clients who appreciated both our technical expertise and our collaborative approach to complex engineering challenges.